Hello, English learners. Welcome back to another advanced lesson with us here at English Pod. My name is Marco.
And my name's Erica.
So today we're bringing you another advanced lesson, and this time it's kind of historical.
Like the name suggests, we are listening in as a president says goodbye to the nation before he steps down from his role as president.
Now, actually, this dialogue is very much based on President Eisenhower's farewell speech.
Okay, so a pretty famous. Now, we have to tell you that we did change the speech a little bit, right?
Yeah, just a little bit to make it a little bit more understandable, but it's basically what he said to the nation back in 1969.
All right, now, I will as well tell you that this is a pretty hard dialogue.
It is very hard because the structures are a little bit complicated and even to a certain point, a little bit poetic, right?
Mm-hmm. So why are we taking this speech as our dialogue? What are we going to learn from this?
Well, we're going to learn some structures and some words that you can use maybe on a resignation letter or maybe in a celebration you want to thank Pete for coming.
Okay, so we're going to learn some pretty difficult vocabulary, but also learn some really useful structures. Like you said, you could use in a resignation letter or even in a formal speech of your own.
Exactly. Now, this presidential farewell speech is divided into two parts. So today we're going to do part one, and then next time we'll finish the speech with part two. So let's listen to President Eisenhower as he says goodbye to the nation, and we'll come back just in a little bit.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. 3 days from now, after a century of service to our country, I shall lay down the responsibilities of office as, in a traditional and solemn ceremony, the authority of the presidency is vested in my successor. This evening I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. Like every other citizen, I wish the new president and all who will labor with him Godspeed. I pray that the coming years will be blessed with peace and prosperity for all. Our people expect their president and the Congress to find essential agreement on questions of great importance, the wise resolution of which will better shape the future of our great nation. My own relations with Congress began on a remote and tenuous basis when, long ago, a member of the Senate appointed me to West Point. I then had the pleasure of building more intimate relationships with Congress during the war and the immediate post-war period. Finally, we have progressed to the mutually interdependent relationship we've had during these past 8 years.
Wow, so Eisenhower is a pretty good speaker, isn't he?
A good speaker, and well, he said a lot of really nice things when he was saying goodbye.
Yeah, pretty inspiring, I thought.
Really inspiring, and as we said, there were a couple of different and difficult words and phrases, so why don't we start right now with language takeaway.
Language takeaway.
Well, Eisenhower said that in 3 days he shall lay down the responsibilities.
To lay down the responsibilities.
All right, lay down something.
Basically, we understand the verb to lay down, right?
Yeah, to put it down, to put it on the ground. Maybe.
Right. Now, he's using it with responsibilities, which is a little bit strange, but it's kind of like a metaphor by saying lay down arms, to lay down your weapons.
Right, and you know what? This is a really common phrase that we would hear, especially when we're talking about, the end of a war or something like that.
Mm-hmm. To lay down your arms,
yeah.
Lay down your weapons.
Yeah, so here I think Eisenhower is kind of referencing this and giving us a little bit of poetry in his speech.
Right. So it's not that he's quitting. It's not that he's being fired.
Yeah.
He's just like finishing what he started.
Yes, so he's laying down his responsibilities. Now, I think this would be quite an interesting phrase to use, for example, in a resignation letter.
Right, so I would say a month from now, I will lay down my responsibilities as manager.
Yep. All right, so that sounds pretty good. Now, he said he's going to be laying down the responsibilities in a traditional and solemn ceremony.
All right, solemn.
Solemn.
Now, solemn, what does that mean? What is a solemn ceremony?
Well, a solemn ceremony would be a serious, respectful, and a little bit sad ceremony.
Okay, so it's a serious matter. It's and it's very respectful, right?
Yeah. So you might say, for example, On the 11th of November, when you're remembering the war, you might say something like, this is a very solemn day.
Very good. Okay. And the authority of the presidency is vested in my successor.
Okay, so interesting verb. No, wait. So interesting word, vested.
Vested.
The authority vested in my successor.
Very good. So this word basically means power that I have by law.
Right. So this power, this important power you have is given to you by the law, by the president, by the country.
This is a very common word you will hear in a wedding when the priest or the person that's leading the wedding will say, by the power vested in me by the state of California.
Yep. I now pronounce you husband and wife.
I now pronounce you husband and wife. So he's saying the power that I have given to me by the state of California, I can now make you be married.
So here Eisenhower is saying the authority of the presidency is vested in my successor. So the power of the presidency will be given to the next president by law.
Exactly. And he also wished the new president and everyone with him, he said, Godspeed.
All right, Godspeed.
Godspeed.
I wish you Godspeed.
Now, Godspeed, what does that mean?
Well, it's kind of a blessing, you know. It basically means good luck and good fortune.
All right. And especially in a journey, right?
Yeah, I think you'd almost only use this when someone's going off on a big trip or a journey. So here they're going on the journey of the presidency.
Right.
So I wish you Godspeed.
Godspeed. Very good. And now let's take a look at our last set of words. When he was talking about Congress, he said that his relation with Congress began on a remote and tenuous basis.
All right, so two interesting words here, remote and tenuous.
Now, remote we understand as being far away or distant.
Yeah. What about tenuous, though?
But tenuous is kind of unimportant or not really relevant.
All right. So actually, this is a pretty high quality, useful and smart sounding word. So I think we should hear a few more examples of how it's used.
Example 1. How can you say the Earth is actually getting cooler? That is a pretty tenuous argument. Example 2.
John believes that Elvis Presley is still alive. He's got a tenuous hold on reality.
Example 3. You're making yourself seem more important than you are. The connection between our company's success and your performance is tenuous at best.
All right, so as we said, these are some pretty difficult words that we found in the dialogue. But now I want to go and look at some really interesting formal structures that Eisenhower used here. So let's look at those now in Fluency Builder.
Fluency Builder.
All right, on Fluency Builder today, we have 3 phrases. And, well, starting with the first one, I think it's one of the most interesting ones. He said, 3 days from now, after half a century of service of our country, I shall lay down the responsibilities of office.
All right, so what's interesting about this?
If you take a look at the structure, he's saying 3 days from now, which is
Future.
And then he makes a reference to the past after a half century of service.
Okay, so we got future, past.
And then again, future. I shall lay down the responsibilities.
All right, so this actually is quite a good structure if you're giving a farewell speech, or even I could imagine using this at a wedding.
Right. How would you use it in a wedding?
Well, I might say 12 hours for now, after a long and beautiful relationship, this couple shall marry.
Very good. So you're making reference to the future and then a past event or something that's been going on for a while. And then future again.
Why don't we do one more example?
So, for example, in a resignation letter, I can say 1 month from now, after 30 years of hard work and dedication to this company, I shall lay down my responsibilities as product manager.
All right, interesting.
So we can use it, and it sounds good. It sounds very professional and
very poetic.
Very poetic.
Yeah.
It sounds nice.
Yeah. All right, so that's one interesting structure. Now, why don't we go on to this next kind of very formal and helpful in a very formal speech?
Well, President Eisenhower said, "This evening I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell."
So this evening I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell.
So it's a very nice way of saying, I'm talking to you today because I am saying goodbye.
Yes. So what I really like about this phrase is the beginning part. This evening I come to you with a message of.
So again, let's suppose we're at a wedding. If I'm offering a toast or I'm the best man, I could say, this evening I come to you with a message of love and trust and respect.
All right. Or maybe if you're the leader of a company, you might say something like, this afternoon I come to you with a message of hope for the future.
Very good. And now the part when he says leave taking and farewell, it's basically saying taking leave or taking like a vacation, right?
Yeah.
And farewell is
Goodbye.
Goodbye. And what about our last phrase?
This is actually a bit of a long one, so I'm going to read it now. Our people expect their president and the Congress to find essential agreement on questions of great importance, the wise resolution of which will better shape the future of our great nation.
Okay, great. Now let's take a look at the first part. Basically, he's saying the people expect the president and the Congress to give them answers, right?
Or, yeah, to agree on important issues.
But in the part when he says the wise resolution of which will better shape the future of our great nation.
Yeah, and this is the part I want to focus on, the wise resolution of which. Now, this is a really wonderful sort of formal structure. So we can see what he's doing here. He's talking about the first idea, right? So the president and the Congress need to find agreement on important issues, right? Now, the wise resolution of which, so he's referring back to that idea. So the wise resolution of what?
Of the essential agreement on questions of great importance.
Right. So really useful structure. Why don't we hear a few more examples of this?
Example 1.
We now face a great challenge, the overcoming of which lead us all to untold riches and success.
Example 2. We as a company now face our most difficult months to date, the outcome of which will determine our company's future. Example 3.
The ambitious plan to reduce poverty, the start of which was launched last Tuesday in New York, will require a huge investment of taxpayers' dollars.
All right, so as you can hear from the examples, we have the main idea, and then he passes on, but then kind of refers back to it again.
Yeah, and this sounds quite formal, but also quite literary and intelligent, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes you sound well-spoken. Very good.
This was quite a difficult dialogue with some really interesting and tricky structures and words. So why don't we hear it one more time all together?
Good evening, my fellow Americans. 3 days from now, after a century of service to our country, I shall lay down the responsibilities of office as, in a traditional and solemn ceremony, the authority of the presidency is vested in my successor. This evening I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. Like every other citizen, I wish the new president and all who will labor with him Godspeed. I pray that the coming years will be blessed with peace and prosperity for all. Our people expect their president and the Congress to find essential agreement on questions of great importance, the wise resolution of which will better shape the future of our great nation. My own relations with Congress began on a remote and tenuous basis when, long ago, a member of the Senate appointed me to West Point. I then had the pleasure of building more intimate relationships with Congress during the war and the immediate post-war period. Finally, we have progressed to the mutually interdependent relationship we've had during these past 8 years.
All right, we're back, and here with us in the studio we have Pete, the actor in the dialogue of President Eisenhower's presidential farewell speech.
He's a pretty convincing actor at that.
Not quite.
So Pete is going to give us a little bit of insight about President Eisenhower. All right, so what can you tell us about President Eisenhower?
Well, he started off as a general. He was an accomplished officer all through the early 20th century, and then he was the supreme commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in World War II. And so now he's most famous for D-Day.
He was leading it? Or he was on the battlefield?
No,
where was
he was the organizer. He was.
Oh, he's kind of like the brains behind the operation.
Yeah, and I don't know if you even want to leave this in, but there's a really cool document that he wrote right before the invasion, and it said he basically knew that this was going to go one of two ways, and he wrote down a script to read in case it failed, and he basically said, I'm sorry to inform you that the invasion did not go as planned, and this has set back our war effort. And when the invasion went well, he threw that in the trash, and then one of his aides found that and was like, wow, this is a historical document, and they kept the...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they have the copy.
Alternate history.
Cool.
All right, so he was an accomplished general, an amazing warrior, but what about his presidency?
Well, at the beginning, probably the biggest thing he did was to wrap up the Korean War, which was a vow he made during his campaign, and then he visited Korea. Obviously, the war is still technically on, but they did arrange a ceasefire. Eisenhower built up the interstate highway system, which is one of the big reasons that America was able to become economically successful in the 20th century. He did it basically so that in case of a war, we'd have an easy way of shipping our soldiers and nukes across the country. But
but it worked well anyways.
Yeah, it's one of these things that pays a side benefit. At least he had to sell it to the country that way. It's very likely that he didn't intend ever to use it that way. But you have to have it's like the war on terror. You got to sell these things.
Well, and I guess it's had a huge impact, not only on the economy of the states, but also like the culture and the way that people view the car and its effect on society.
Definitely.
So pretty influential guy, this Eisenhower.
Yeah, and a very historical lesson. It's just a little bit of a culture and maybe some insight on American history. It's not like we're politically active or anything, but yeah, it was some interesting information there, and also, well, he was considered to be a pretty good president.
Yeah, he's rated, I wouldn't say among the top 5 or so, but quite accomplished.
Well, maybe not the greatest president we've ever seen, but he wrote a pretty good farewell speech, so I think we have that to thank him for.
All right, guys, so if you have any other questions or comments, you can come to the website at englishpod.com, and you can leave them there for Erica or I.
Okay, so thanks for downloading, you guys, and until next time, goodbye.
Bye. The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word. The national legislative body of the United States, consisting of the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Congress.
Flimsy, weak, or uncertain.
Tenuous.
A hill in Washington, D.C., where the Capitol building sits and Congress meets.
Capitol Hill.
Serious, formal.
Solemn.
To present as a gift or an honor. Confer.
Bestow.
To give someone the legal right or power to do something.
Vest.
Difficult to accomplish, strenuous.
Arduous.
An economic state of growth with rising profits and full employment.
Prosperity.
A formal statement of agreement.
Resolution.
Used to wish success to someone who is going away.
Godspeed.
Let's try that faster. To give someone the legal right or power to do something.
Vest.
Difficult to accomplish, strenuous.
Arduous.
Used to wish success to someone who is going away.
Godspeed.
To present as a gift or an honor. Confer.
Bestow.
A hill in Washington, D.C., where the Capitol building sits and Congress meets.
Capitol Hill.
The national legislative body of the United States, consisting of the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Congress.
Serious, formal.
Solemn.
An economic state of growth with rising profits and full employment.
Prosperity.
A formal statement of agreement.
Resolution.
Flimsy, weak, or uncertain.
Tenuous.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
Tenuous. How can you say that the Earth is actually getting cooler? That is a pretty tenuous argument. Tenuous. John believes that Elvis Presley is still alive. He's got a tenuous hold on reality. Tenuous. You're making yourself seem more important than you are. The connection between our company's success and your performance is tenuous at best. Vest. With the powers vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Vest. I present you with the key to our city by the powers vested in me as mayor of this great city. Vest. The power to declare war is vested in the Congress. Solemn. We are here today on this solemn and tragic day to say goodbye to an inspiration and a friend, Michael Jackson. Solemn. Yom Kippur is a traditionally solemn Jewish holiday that focuses on self-reflection and self-improvement. Solemn. Every year, September 11th is a very solemn occasion as Americans remember the victims of the World Trade Center attack. Resolution. It is paramount that Democrats and Republicans come to a resolution for the economic stimulus plan. Resolution. How will President Obama find a resolution for health care reform that will benefit everyone? Resolution. I've made a resolution to stop smoking and lose 20 pounds this year. Godspeed. We wish you Godspeed. May you return from your journey safely. Godspeed. Godspeed. When you are fighting for our country, know that your family is proud of you. Godspeed. It's time for me to go out and experience life for myself. Goodbye and Godspeed.
Hello, English learners. Welcome back to English Pod. My name is Marco.
And I'm Erica.
And today we're bringing you part 2 of the presidential farewell speech of President Eisenhower.
That's right. So we saw in a previous lesson the beginning of this speech. Now we're going to look towards the end of the speech. Now we must tell you as well that we did change the speech a little bit, right?
We changed it a little bit to make it a little bit more comprehensible, and also we did shorten it. The speech isn't this short. We did take out a lot of stuff.
All right. So again, Marco, why are we looking at this speech? What are we learning from it?
Well, in this last part of the presidential farewell speech, there are a lot of great words that are more difficult and very poetic, so you can use them in different formal circumstances or just to sound a little bit more well-spoken.
Yeah. And we also, again, are going to look at some really quite difficult and challenging structures that we hope you can use maybe when you're giving a formal talk or even in your writing if you want to sound quite professional.
Okay, very good. So why don't we listen to the dialogue for the first time? Let's listen how President Eisenhower says goodbye, and then we'll come back and look at the words.
We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. 3 of these involved our own country. Despite the carnage of these conflicts, America is today the strongest, the most influential, and the most productive nation in the world. We are understandably proud of this preeminence, yet we realize that America's leadership and prestige depend not merely upon our unmatched material progress, riches, and military strength, but on how we use our power in the interests of world peace and human betterment. Throughout America's adventure in free government, such basic purposes have been to keep the peace, to foster progress in human achievement, and to enhance liberty, dignity, and integrity among peoples and among nations. We pray that peoples of all faiths, all races, all nations, may have their great human needs satisfied, that those now denied opportunity shall come to enjoy it to the full, that all who yearn for freedom may experience its spiritual blessings, that those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibilities, that all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, that the scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made to disappear from the earth, and that, in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. Now, on Friday noon, I am to become a private citizen. I am proud to do so. I look forward to it. Thank you, and good night.
Well, that certainly was a very moving speech, hey?
Very moving and to a certain point a little bit religious, huh?
Yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later, but let's concentrate on the language now. So we'll go to language takeaway.
Language takeaway.
All right, on language takeaway today, we'll start with our first word, and it's preeminence.
All right, we are understandably proud of this preeminence.
A preeminence.
So preeminence, what is this?
Basically, it's the state of being the leader of something.
Okay, so in this case, America was the preeminent nation.
Right, so they were coming up, they were very prosperous, so they had a preeminence in the world.
All right, so I think we can see here you can use this as an adjective, a preeminent nation, or as a noun, an uncountable noun, the preeminence of our state.
Very good. Since we can use this word as a noun and an adjective, why don't we listen to some more examples so we can get a better understanding of it?
Example 1.
Now please welcome Dr. Frank Hicks, the world's most preeminent expert on nuclear biology.
Example 2.
He's been a leader in his field for 25 years, and his preeminence has never been questioned.
Example 3.
Carol Dixon is one of the most preeminent experts in green technology.
All right, well, Eisenhower is talking about all of the things that the American people had done since they became a free nation, and one of these things was to foster progress in human achievement.
Foster progress in human achievement.
Well, I like this verb a lot, to foster something.
So if I say to foster progress or to foster something, what am I saying?
To help something grow and develop.
To take care of it, to nurse it.
Yeah. We very commonly hear this word associated with children, right?
A foster child.
Yeah. So what's that?
If you have a foster child, you are basically taking care of a child because the parents can't look after him. It's not like adopting because it's not actually legal. It's just that you're helping somebody out by raising this child.
Right. So we can see the connection there, a foster child to foster something. But this is really a great word, and I think it would help to give a couple of examples of how we could use it.
So for example, I can say our company is looking to foster better creativity in the workplace.
Or we could say, here at Praxis Language, we foster the development of your English.
Very good. So the word foster. Now, moving on, in his speech, he was talking about nations and faiths and different types of groups, and he said, all who yearn for freedom.
All right, this is a great phrase. All who yearn for freedom.
To yearn.
So to yearn for something.
Now, if I yearn for freedom or I yearn for something, it's basically that I really want it in my heart.
Yeah, you really wish for it in a way that's almost painful. You know, you want it so badly.
Now, you wouldn't say like, I'm yearning for ice cream, would you?
No, unless you were locked up in prison and hadn't had ice cream for 55 years.
Exactly. So it's usually related to something that's very difficult to get or something like freedom or yearning for.
That's really important.
Exactly. Something very important. And now for our last word, President Eisenhower was talking about charity, he was talking about freedom, and he mentioned the scourges of poverty.
Okay, so scourges.
The scourges of poverty.
Scourges is a really difficult but interesting word. So why don't we hear a few more examples to help us understand it?
Example 1.
Malaria is a disease that continues to be a scourge to the developing world.
Example 2.
One day we hope to eliminate the scourge of cancer.
Example 3.
NATO promises to wipe out the scourge of terrorism.
So as we can see, the scourges of something basically is the cause of pain or suffering. Mm-hmm. So now relating it back to the text, we see scourges of poverty.
Yeah, scourges of poverty, scourges of disease, and scourges of ignorance. All right, so we can see that poverty, ignorance, and disease cause a lot of really terrible things, right?
Exactly. So that's why we say they are scourges.
Okay, so scourges. Now, so that brings us to the end of our words for takeaway today. But, you know, as we talked about earlier, we've got some really difficult and interesting structures to look at now in Fluency Builder.
Fluency Builder.
Okay, so in Fluency Builder, we'll start off with the very first sentence of the paragraph. When he said, we now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century.
Okay, so I love this phrase. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of the century.
Now, it's interesting because he is making reference to the future in the present.
Mm-hmm. And he's using a great phrase to do that. We now stand.
Mm-hmm. Now, we can change it a little bit and use the first part, we now stand, in different circumstances. So why don't we listen to a couple of examples?
Example 1.
We now stand before you to declare our love and be united in marriage.
Example 2.
I stand before this court and declare my innocence.
Example 3.
Together, we now stand before this great challenge and we will fight arm in arm to defeat poverty.
All right, so you can see that this is a wonderful phrase to use maybe in a formal speech, right?
Right, or a wedding again, or a formal ceremony.
Yeah. So, and it gives you this idea, this sort of very poetic image of people sort of almost standing at the cliff, standing before the, you know, some big change that's about to take place.
Exactly. So 10 years past the midpoint of a century, the United States has witnessed 4 major wars, right?
Okay.
And, well, he said, despite the carnage of these conflicts, America is today the strongest, the most influential, and most productive nation in the world.
Okay, so a great structure here. Despite the carnage of these conflicts, America today is the strongest, blah, 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 blah.
Right. Now, let's look at that first word, despite the carnage of these conflicts.
Okay, so carnage, what's that?
Carnage is like a massacre, right? Where many people got hurt or killed.
Okay, so a pretty violent situation when a lot of people died.
Mm-hmm. And now, why does he use this word despite?
Okay, so he's basically saying even though we had all of this death and violence in this century, we're still the greatest nation, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly, that's exactly it. I can say, for example, despite the economic crisis the world is going through, our company has an enormous opportunity to grow and be more profitable.
Okay, or if we want to take it and imagine we're at a wedding, we might say something like this. We could say, despite the many difficulties this couple has faced, they have a very bright and happy future together.
Very good. And now, if we take a look at the last paragraph, it's very interesting because it's one sentence.
It's a really long sentence.
It's a very long sentence. So even though it's not a phrase, let's take a look at the punctuation of this paragraph.
Okay, so Eisenhower starts out by saying, "We pray that peoples of all faiths, all races, all nations may have their great human needs satisfied."
And then we have a semicolon there, right?
Right.
So why do we have a semicolon?
Well, here's what he's doing. He's saying, we pray for something.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's listing the many different things that he's praying for.
Okay, so it's basically a list.
Yep. Okay, so we know that when you're writing a list, we commonly use commas between all the things that are in this list.
Mm-hmm.
But here, because they are long and complex ideas, a comma is not enough.
Right.
You need a semicolon. Okay, so we can see here from the text that the semicolon is a great way to separate ideas, big ideas, complex ideas in a list.
Exactly. So you can use it and not necessarily have to end your sentence or that each idea become one sentence. You can all just make it in one big sentence.
Yep. You know, and actually I remember back to high school, Marco, my teacher told me, hey, if you throw in a few semicolons into your writing and do it properly, you'll really impress people.
All right. So this is good advice that you can take and throw in a couple of semicolons, a little bit of commas here and there, and it'll look like you really know how to write.
Yep. Okay. So with that in mind, why don't we listen to what Eisenhower wrote one last time?
We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. 3 of these involved our own country. Despite the carnage of these conflicts, America is today the strongest, the most influential, and the most productive nation in the world. We are understandably proud of this preeminence, yet we realize that America's leadership and prestige depend not merely upon our unmatched material progress, riches, and military strength, but on how we use our power in the interests of world peace and human betterment. Throughout America's adventure in free government, such basic purposes have been to keep the peace, to foster progress in human achievement, and to enhance liberty, dignity, and integrity among peoples and among nations. We pray that peoples of all faiths, all races, all nations, may have their great human needs satisfied, that those now denied opportunity shall come to enjoy it to the full, that all who yearn for freedom may experience its spiritual blessings, that those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibilities, that all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, that the scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made to disappear from the earth, and that, in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. Now, on Friday noon, I am to become a private citizen. I am proud to do so. I look forward to it. Thank you, and good night.
All right, we're back, and we're here again with Pete, our voice actor for the second part of the dialogue. And Pete, we have a couple more questions for you today.
Cool.
So I hear in Eisenhower's speech that he keeps referencing God. Like he keeps saying, I pray, blah, 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 blah. He said Godspeed, blah, 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 blah. So what's up with that? Why is he talking about God?
Well, this is a very interesting question. Traditionally, America has had a really clear boundary between church and state, and you'll hear a lot of rhetoric these days that says, we're a Christian nation and we were founded as a Christian nation. Well, that's baloney.
Baloney, so it's not true.
At the time when the country was founded 200 years ago, it was overwhelmingly Christian. If the founding fathers, as we call them, like George Washington and them, if they had wanted a Christian nation, they could have had it. They explicitly did not. And a lot of people since then have gotten that confused. And now when we have a very large Muslim population, we have Buddhists, we have people in all various different kinds of Mormonism and everything, it's even less possible now. So I'm kind of baffled when I hear people say that America is a Christian nation.
But you even have it now in the coins, or on the money, right? It says, "In God we trust."
Right. That started in the early 20th century. I think that was Teddy Roosevelt era. He opposed that. Roosevelt was really opposed to that. But
and then what happened? They approved it.
Yeah, and people said later, like Eisenhower talking about this stuff. In America we have something called the Pledge of Allegiance, which I don't think you guys probably have.
Not in Canada.
Yeah. Obviously, you wouldn't do it to America, but to your own. It's kind of
Like a salute to the flag, right?
yeah. It's a little bit nationalist. I did it growing up. You put your hand over your heart and you face the flag and you say, "I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." That part about one nation under God, that was added in the 50s as a kind of a way of showing that America is not, quote-unquote, a godless communist country.
Wow.
Yeah, because communism teaches, no religion, and so they make sure we're not communist,
Okay, but we don't think that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about tolerance, so I think that's kind of absurd.
Okay, so what I think is really interesting, though, is that every political speech, every time a political leader has to say something publicly, he'll always quote God, right?
Right, and they'll often end a speech with, thank you and God bless America or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, you know what, for me as a Canadian is really strange. Like, if a Canadian president said, God bless Canada, no one would know what to do. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Anyway.
I had an ex-girlfriend who was British, and she, Tony Blair started with that a couple times. He said, and God bless us all or something, and she was just put off by it, and she was like, the Brits will never take this, and they didn't. Yeah, no one was impressed.
All right, well, an interesting feature of American history, politics, and society. So Thanks for that insight, Pete.
Cool, my pleasure.
Yeah, and if you guys have any comments or any suggestions about this lesson or any upcoming lessons, just let us know.
Or American politics in general.
Cool, I'll try to stop in on the forum and see if I can answer a question or two.
That would be awesome.
So visit us at englishpod.com, and Marco, myself, and Pete are around to answer your questions.
All right, we'll see you guys there.
Thanks for downloading, and goodbye.
Bye. The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word. To help something grow or develop.
Foster.
Badly affected by disease, pain, grief, etc.
Stricken.
To feel a strong desire or wish for something.
Yearn.
In U.S. politics, a member or supporter of the Democratic Party, the more liberal of the two main political parties in the U.S.
Democrat.
More important, skillful, or successful than other.
Preeminence.
Belonging to the Republican Party, the more conservative of the two main political parties in the U.S.
Republican.
Someone or something that causes a great amount of trouble.
Scourge.
In the U.S., the wife of the president-elect.
First Lady.
To be in a particular place or position.
We now stand.
An operation or series of operations energetically pursued to accomplish a purpose.
Campaign.
Let's try that faster. In the U.S., the wife of the president-elect.
First Lady.
To be in a particular place or position.
We now stand.
Belonging to the Republican Party, the more conservative of the two main political parties in the U.S.
Republican.
Badly affected by disease, pain, grief, etc.
Stricken.
To help something grow or develop.
Foster.
To feel a strong desire or wish for something.
Yearn.
An operation or series of operations energetically pursued to accomplish a purpose.
Campaign.
More important, skillful, or successful than other.
Preeminence.
Someone or something that causes a great amount of trouble.
Scourge.
In U.S. politics, a member or supporter of the Democratic Party, the more liberal of the two main political parties in the U.S.
Democrat.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
We now stand. We now stand before you to declare our love and be united in marriage. We now stand. I stand before this court and declare my innocence. We now stand. Together, we now stand before this great challenge, and we will fight it arm in arm to defeat poverty. Yearn. We must fight for those who yearn for their freedoms. Yearn. In the paths of all great men, you will find a yearning to learn and to succeed. Yearn. I'm yearning to find someone who will love me for me. Preeminence. Now, please welcome Dr. Frank Hicks, the world's most preeminent expert on nuclear biology. Preeminence. He's been a leader in his field for 25 years, and his preeminence has never been questioned. Preeminence. Carol Dixon is one of the most preeminent experts in green technology. Foster. It is our creed to foster and maintain a spirit of fraternity. Foster. To restore our country to the glory of its past, we must foster an attitude of determination in social service. Foster. Unsanitary conditions help foster the spread of disease. Scourge. One day we hope to eliminate the scourge of cancer. Scourge. Malaria is a disease that continues to be a scourge to the developing world. Scourge. NATO promises to wipe out the scourge of terrorism.